Everybody, Mr. T here, and today we're talking about United States history, chapter 16. Uh, this is a time period where the United States started to become a major player on the world stage, and becoming a world power. The time period that we're talking about is around year 1900. I'll start a little bit before that, and we'll go past a little bit after that. But this was the time in the world of imperialism, which is where larger nations went and claimed other nations to get rich off them, was at its height in Europe. Major European powers like Great Britain and France, Germany, Belgium were taking over nations in Africa and Asia and getting rich off of it. Many Americans believe that imperialism would be a great idea for the United States to get involved in. It would bring prosperity and prestige to the United States and allow Americans to spread their Western ideals to the rest of the world. Up until this point, as we know, the United States largely stayed out of the other world, kept to themselves, but see, that was about to change. So, shortly after the Civil War, Secretary of State William Seward, the person in that piece of land we now call Alaska. We bought it from Russia for $7.2 million. When he bought this, many people thought that he was a fool for purchasing this and that it was just a straight waste of money. But Seward would have the last laugh when Alaska proved to be rich in natural resources, especially oil. Because of that, the United States annexed Alaska in 1884. Another territory that the United States got involved in is the island nation of Hawaii. Now, America had been there, or not America, but Americans had been there since the beginning of the 19th century. The Hawaiian Islands were united nations, and they were a major source for sugar for the U.S. Now, most of these sugar planters who harvested the sugar cane in Hawaii were Americans and American business forced the King of Hawaii to grant them political powers. So they used their business and their connection to gain a political edge in Hawaii and have some influence over the king. That started to change in 1891 when Queen Kalani came to power, and she wanted to end all that. She wanted to limit American influence. She wanted to from having power over the Hawaiian government. And this worked perfectly. At the same time, Congress back in the United States decided to impose tariffs or taxes on imports of Hawaiian sugar, making it more expensive to buy Hawaiian sugar. And you could imagine that this very much pissed off the American businessmen in Hawaii. So in response, in 1893, those American sugar planters revolt. They got the help of the U.S. Marines and the U.S. ambassador to Hawaii, and they led a revolution, forcing Queen Leleukalani out of power and forming their own government. Once they formed this government, they quickly asked to be annexed by the United States. This plan was all well and good, and President Benjamin Harrison at the time, the person in the top right, he agreed and set in motion a plan to annex Hawaii. But the treaty that he outlined did not get completed or did not get ratified before he left office, and then it was left up to the next president, Grover Cleveland. When he took office, he supported annexing Hawaii just like Benjamin Harrison did, but he was really keen on having the support of the Hawaiian people. And that wasn't necessarily the case. So Hawaii just kind of sat there as a territory of the United States until 1900, when President McKinley um, officially made Hawaii a territory of the United States. Okay, Samoa, which is another group of islands about 2,500 miles south of Hawaii, was also annexed around this time, further expanding the American presence in the South Pacific. And you can see this little graph here, the distance uh, that it takes to fly in hours from North America up in the right-hand corner to Hawaii, which is about 5 hours. And then from Hawaii, it's about another 5 hours to Samoa, 5 hours to Australia, 3.5 to New Zealand. So these were some pretty important islands for the United States to hold on to as we get further into U.S. history. All right, another big part of the world, China, we've talked about a lot. You know, they had a lot of land and they had a lot of money. They were also very private, very picky about who could trade within their borders, where they could trade. In the late 1800s, the European nations began to establish some what we call spheres of in China, which allowed to trade more freely. And these countries were getting rich off of this area that once closed off to them. At this early stage of trade with China, the United States was kept out. And of course, American business people were very much set about this, and they feared that these European nations would get the upper hand and would take over all of the trade with China, and that they would keep Americans out of these lucrative new trade businesses or places where they could sell their goods. In about 1900, there was a rebellion in China. This was called the Boxer Rebellion. The Boxers did not like foreigners in the country doing business within China. And so they staged a revolution against these foreign business people, killing people from European countries. The United States, in response, sent China to help put down this rebellion. And when they were successful, they were quickly. Then Secretary of State John Hay, you see there on the right, used it as an opportunity to open up the door for the United States to gain a foothold in the trading with China. Secretary Hay suggested what we'll call the open door policy, which what it would do is would allow all nations to have equal trading in China. Remember, this was important because the United States had very little trading rights, if any at all. And European nations had lots of trading rights because they had these huge spheres of influence. Well, now the United States was trying to have equal trading rights. Not only that, but the United States would be the ones who made sure there were equal trading rights, keep the door open. And this proved to be a great opportunity for the United States to grab a huge piece of the trade with China, which did. So that is the open door policy with China. Okay. Now let's talk about the Spanish-American War, a very short war, but proved to be pretty important in the United States dealing with other parts of the world. So first, let's talk about our old friend Spain. You guys remember Spain. We talked about them, a country who had a huge, large empire that was all through South America and Central America and even parts of North America. At this time, in the late 800s, Spain was starting to see their empire shrink as many countries were declaring their independence. And in 1895, this gentleman right here, right, Jose Marti, who was a Cuban revolutionary, he was once exiled, which means sent away and told to never come back to Cuba. Well, he made his way back to Cuba and he led the fight for Cuban independence. Now, those of you guys that know geography, you know that Cuba is, short 90 miles off Florida coast. So really close to the United States, and this new Cuban independence were very much worried. Well, worried many people in the United States because they relied on trade with Cuba, and so, but they also did not want to anger or upset the Spain. So at first, they did not interfere. As the situation in Cuba started to intensify, it was on by the newspapers in the United States. Fighting in Cuba was very violent, and the Spanish treated Cuban prisoners terribly. And American newspapers told those stories to a shocked American public. And apparently, being shocked was good because this sold a lot of newspapers as Joseph Pulitzer and William Hearst became very rich off of what we call yellow journalism. Okay, yellow journalism is where they would take an event and they would exaggerate it or sensationalize it to make it sound much more dangerous or much more important or crazier than it was. All in the hoping newspaper, and they sold a lot of them because one of the events that made yellow journalism famous was the sinking or the explosion of U.S. Rioting in Havana, which was the capital of Cuba, started to go fierce, and it was putting many American citizens in danger who lived in Cuba. At the time, President McKinley sent the USS Maine to Havana in January of 1898 for the purpose of protecting U.S. citizens and U.S. interests in these riots. Then now blew on February 15th, no warning, ships floated all in the harbor. Okay. Newspapers blamed Spain. They sensationalized the headlines. They said Spain blows up USS Maine. These are acts of war, blah, blah, blah. Evidence later showed there was an accident, but at that point, the evidence didn't matter. Remember the Maine became a rallying cry, and this was a push for war, full-on war against Spain. So on April 20th, a couple months after the Maine exploded, Congress recognized an independent nation, made Spanish troops leave the island, and they created an amendment called Teller Amendment, which stated that the U.S. had no interest in controlling Cuba. And 5 days later, April 25th, Congress declared full-on war on Spain. Another territory of Spain was the Philippines. Like Cuba, Filipinos in the 1890s. Around the same time, they were also fighting for their independence. This gentleman you see here on the left, Commodore George Dewey, after the United States declared war on Spain, led an American fleet to the Philippines on April 30th, 1898. And he got there, he had the people because they were already trying to win their independence from Spain. And so with some help from the Filipino natives, Dewey destroyed the Spanish ships in Manila Harbor on May 1st, 1898, and this was the first official battle of the Spanish-American War. All right, so most of the fighting in the Spanish-American War was done by the Navy, but the Army did play a role in the war. Many volunteers signed up to fight, including a regiment of cowboys, students, and others. This regiment was organized by the man you see on the horse, Theodore Teddy Roosevelt, and it became known as the Rough Riders. On July 1st, 1890, the Rough Riders captured the hills around Santiago, Cuba, and they helped the Americans win the Battle of San Juan Hills. And you can see this is a picture of the Rough Riders, become a very well-known, famous regiment from the Army, mostly because they were made of young volunteers that had no military background. So like I said, this was a short war and not a very eventful war. August 12th, 1898, only a few months after fighting had begun, an armistice was declared. And remember we talked about it before, an armistice is where both sides agreed to stop fighting. At this time, it basically was the end of the Spanish Empire. The fighting had cost very few American lives. In fact, many Americans actually died from tropical diseases and from wounds from battle. Okay? Another treaty of Paris was signed on December 10th, 1898, and at this time, Spain gave control of Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines to the United States. So from this war, this 3-month war, the United States gained the island nations of Cuba, Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. So what happened to those new territories? You remember at the beginning of this chapter, the United States, lots of Americans thought that imperialism was a good thing, but it was kind of in stark contrast of the beliefs of many other Americans and how people should be independent to run their own countries. So what did they do with those new territories? Well, Cuba, as you can see, 90 miles south of the United States in the Caribbean Sea, it remained a protectorate of the United States, where the United States protected Cuba, had some interest in it, but that lasted for a very short time. And in 1901, Cuba became an independent nation. Okay? Puerto Rico, on the other hand, which is about almost another 1,000 miles south of Cuba, it came under U.S. control and is still under U.S. control to this day. It is territory of the United States, and you commonly hear that Puerto Ricans are still in debate on whether they should become a state, remain in the United States, remain a territory of the United States, or become their own independent nation. So that is still being debated to this day. The Philippines is closer to China. Right after the Spanish-American War, it came under US control. It actually fought the United States for their own independence from 1899 to 1902, shortly after the Spanish-American War, and they lost. So the United States kept control of the Philippines until 1946, when the Philippines became an independent nation. All right, so that brings the end of our chapter. Go ahead and check out the video from Crash Course that gives you guys more information on imperialism and just the U.S. involved with imperialism. Go ahead and use these slides and this video to complete the 3 chapters, and I'll see you in chapter 17.